Okay, let's kick off this explainer with a pretty simple question. Do our current economic and environmental anxieties feel completely unprecedented to you? I mean, you look at the news today, right? We're seeing all these headlines about compounding supply chain issues, unpredictable, violent weather, and the lingering scars of a global pandemic. It is incredibly easy to feel like we're navigating entirely uncharted territory. But what if I told you that humanity has actually been here before, that we faced down a nearly identical convergence of nightmares? It's honestly eerie how the catastrophes of the 14th century directly mirror the compounding crises of our own modern era. Back in the 1310s, okay, sure, they weren't dealing with container ship delays, but their regional supply chains utterly collapsed anyway, mostly due to war and massive environmental shocks. They faced a cost of living crisis so severe that grain inflation hit 600%, and that paved the way for the deadliest pandemic in recorded history. Our modern tools might be different, but the fundamental human experience of surviving overlapping global crises, that's something we deeply share with our medieval ancestors. So, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to explore exactly how medieval humans survived their own catastrophic cost of living crisis, and we're going to look at it through the lens of modern science and, believe it or not, ancient magic. We'll dig into the hard data proving the sheer scale of their suffering, and then, and this is the most fascinating part to me, we'll look at exactly how ordinary people fought back against their very real fears. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, a medieval cost of living, the end of the Golden Age. Let's look at the brutal economic reality of the 1300s, right as a long golden age of agricultural bounty just came to a screeching halt. Driven by climate shocks and broken supply chains, grain prices absolutely rocketed by up to 800% in parts of England during the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317. I mean, just imagine going to the grocery store today and finding out that a basic loaf of bread suddenly cost 8 times as much as it did last week. Talk about inflation, right? But this wasn't just sticker shock, this was actual starvation. The pre-industrial agricultural system was already straining under a seriously overpopulated society. So when the climate abruptly turned hostile, the entire system literally just broke. And the human toll of this starvation was just absolute. Life expectancy plummeted from 35 years in 127.6 down to a mere 17 years by 1375. Up to 15% of the English population died during the famine alone. The societal breakdown was total. Crime rose fourfold as people resorted to theft and even murder just to find food. Decades of steady progress simply vanished overnight, throwing a relatively prosperous European society into a dramatic, punishing reverse. This rapid climate shift took Europe from a balmy, overpopulated medieval warm period straight into a sudden, freezing environmental catastrophe. See, for 2.5 centuries leading up to 1300, Europe experienced unusually warm weather. This fueled incredible growth, Gothic architecture, the rise of universities, the whole shebang. But it also bred complacency. The first terrifying warning sign actually came in 1303, when the Baltic Sea completely froze over. Then, in the spring of 1315, relentless rain began to fall, and it just didn't stop, rotting the crops right in the muddy ground. Even when the weather finally improved in 1317, that warm golden age was gone forever, and temperatures actually wouldn't fully recover until the 1850s. Moving on to Section 2, Ice Cores and the Plague, reading history in the ice. So you might be wondering, how do we actually know the true scale of this devastation? Well, it comes down to some brilliant modern scientific detective work decoding our past, right where history meets cutting-edge environmental science. Harvard researchers utilized tephra, which, by the way, are these microscopic airborne volcanic particles from an 1875 Icelandic eruption. They used these to accurately calibrate and date ancient alpine ice cores. Because each volcanic eruption leaves a distinct chemical fingerprint, scientists can perfectly align these icy layers with written historical records. This reveals deep historical weather patterns down to the specific year, and sometimes, incredibly, even down to individual medieval storms. As Professor Michael McCormick explains, this advanced technology allows us to literally read a gigantic new archive of human history trapped right there in the ice. We don't have to rely solely on the surviving chronicles of monks anymore. Now we can look at the chemical composition of centuries-old frozen precipitation to conclusively prove that Europe was battered by a long, intense period of climatic variability. And these ice cores prove that this prolonged period of extreme weather physically weakened the population, totally setting the stage for the plague's unprecedented 50% mortality rate. The Black Death, you see, didn't just sweep through a healthy society in 1347. It arrived on the shores of a continent where the population had already been deeply malnourished and physically compromised for decades by the Great Famine. Now, as a quick scientific caveat here, archaeologists actually pool various medieval famine burials together. They do this to confidently map out these broad mortality trends without skewing their sample sizes. Because it's really difficult to assign a specific skeleton to one isolated famine event, analyzing them as a single pooled famine category allows researchers to see the overarching physiological toll that this whole era of starvation took on the human body. That brings us to Section 3, Magic, Matter, and Miracles, taking action against fear. Because the thing is, ordinary medieval people didn't just passively sit around waiting to die. In the face of starvation, communities really rallied around the Feast of Corpus Christi, using the symbolism of the Eucharistic bread to maintain social order and collective strength. It is absolutely no coincidence that the first reference to this feast celebration in England happens right in the middle of the Great Famine in 1318. When food was incredibly scarce, emphasizing a ritual centered entirely around bread became a powerful community anchor. The individual grains baked into a single loaf, that became a direct physical metaphor for terrified individuals coming together to support one another in the face of total social collapse. And now for Section 4, the power of everyday objects, protection in the palm of your hand. This brings us to my favorite part of the explainer, how everyday individuals took survival into their own hands using deeply personal everyday objects. I mean, when the weather outside is destroying your crops and society feels like it's literally ending, what do you hold on to? Well, for example, pregnant women would scratch invocations like Ave Maria into ordinary copper buckles to manifest divine protection for themselves and their unborn children. These weren't expensive, highly crafted jewels owned by the elite. No, these were cheap, everyday accessories. By carving the Virgin Mary's name into the metal, they weren't just decorating the buckle. They believed they were turning the object into a sort of contact relic. The name itself brought the Holy Presence directly to their bodies during a deeply dangerous time for both mothers and infants. People also desperately wanted to protect their homes and belongings from disaster and witchcraft, so these strategically concealed magical items in all sorts of structural weak points. These are known as apotropic deposits, which basically means items meant to turn away evil. Think about where disasters actually strike a home, right? Floodwaters come under doorways, fires start in chimneys, witches were thought to enter through drafty windows. By hiding protective charms in these exact vulnerable locations, ordinary people felt they were actively securing their lives and property against the unpredictable forces of nature and the supernatural. Sailors even got in on this. They placed a silver coin inside the keel of a 15th century ship as a constant physical conduit for the Lord's intercession at sea. This specific coin, a silver petit blanc from 1447, was carefully sealed right near the mast step of a merchant vessel found in Newport. It was placed very specifically so that the cross and holy legend faced upwards. The sailors didn't just view this as a good luck charm. They viewed it as planting a seed of divine protection that permeated the very timber of the ship, guarding the crew and the cargo from the terrifying violence of medieval storms. So the crucial takeaway here is this. They truly believed that by inscribing or hiding these objects, the actual physical matter became embedded with holy power, actively fighting back against the terrifying chaos of their world. These items were not just passive symbols to our ancestors. The matter itself was viewed as organic, alive, and capable of holding agency. By physically altering a coin, a buckle, or a building foundation, they were exerting control over a world that had seemingly lost its mind to inflation, pestilence, and climate collapse. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. When future archaeologists look back at our era of pandemics and climate anxiety, what everyday objects will they find that define our survival? Will it be discarded face masks, digital hard drives? Just like the medieval humans who scratched prayers into copper buckles to feel safe, we too leave a trail of material culture. A trail that tells the story of our fears, our resilience, and our deeply human need to find control in the face of crisis. Keep that in mind the next time you hold a comforting object during a stressful headline. Thanks so much for joining me, and stay curious.